Requiem for Justice is an online event that brings together writers, artists, thinkers, and activists from all around the world to rally against injustice and oppression. As we were preparing for this event from our offices in Beirut, we were all shaken by a horrible disaster, a huge explosion at Beirut port that destroyed large parts of the city and caused the death and injury of thousands of people. The explosion is another stark example of how much corruption, injustice, and oppression can cost our societies. Once again, we find ourselves faced with a challenge that we cannot face alone. No one can face this alone. The damaging impact of such events calls for collaboration among individuals and organizations from all walks of life. This is the essence of Landscapes of Hope. The challenges our societies face today cannot be overcome unless we break down the boundaries that separate between the artist, the thinker, the scientist, the teacher, the social worker, the funder, and the politician.
These sectors, the boundaries between sectors are artificial boundaries. So when civil society responds to a challenge, it really doesn't make sense to divide challenges into silos, like this is only about gender, this is only about violence against minorities, this is only about economic justice, because all of these things operate together in the lives of people.
So cross-sector work is crucial to build alliances, to find allies, which in turn is fundamental to create impact on whatever field you're working in. Cross-sector work is also critical to understand one another. Like we need to find spaces and means to which we can understand one another so we can further understand the larger issues that we're facing.
Requiem for Justice is curated and produced by the Landscapes of Hope network of 25 civil society organizations. It is our attempt at rallying together for the causes we believe in and against the so many injustices that are inflicted on our societies. It is our say today as a community.
We are going to really take off. We're going to begin to be daring, be audacious, to think very imaginatively and to take risks in the projects that we do, but that especially the projects that we work on collaboratively and collectively together have meaning for the communities in which we work with.
Over 3 days, we will present films, music, and poetry by prominent thinkers, writers, and artists from 18 countries. We hope that you will enjoy this journey, and we invite you to contribute to advocating the messages and spreading the beautiful artistic work by sharing the program via social media and all other channels. Requiem for Justice is an opportunity for all believers in freedom and justice to raise their voices.
The human rights movement is taking place amidst one of the most serious humanitarian emergencies in the world, which is not the result of wars or natural disasters, but caused by policies against liberties and democracy. New approaches, challenges, and hopes lie on the path of the activists who decide not to give up.
Solo trajimos flores y un cartel. Solo flores y un cartel. Ojalá pudiéramos llenar de flores esta tanqueta y ojalá pudiéramos llenar el país de paz.
In recent years, Venezuela has suffered from a complex humanitarian emergency. Currently, it is the second largest refugee crisis in the world and the first in the Americas, with more than 5 million Venezuelans who have fled the country. The fourth largest food crisis in the world. 25% of the population does not have access to stable sources of water. 3.2 million children require humanitarian assistance. 79.3% of Venezuelan households are in extreme poverty. 420 people imprisoned for political reasons. Hundreds of families of the indigenous Wayuu people suffer from food insecurity at critical levels. 9 out of 10 homes suffer interruptions to the electrical service. In 2019, a series of multi-day national electricity blackouts occurred in just 2 months. The outrage at this oppression motivated Venezuelan activists to defend people and their dignity, their convictions, and their hope for freedom. As the need for different causes to join forces arose, organizations began to work together under the framework of human rights. The work of documentation, raising awareness, and the assistance of victims was strengthened with advocacy work to end the systematic and massive violations of human rights in Venezuela. Through that work, Venezuela's case has reached the International Criminal Court. We made a visit by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to the country possible. A fact-finding mission has been established by the Human Rights Council, and the international humanitarian response has been set up in the country, though it still faces great challenges. On March 13, 2020, the Nicolás Maduro administration declared a national state of alarm as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, ordering extreme confinement throughout the country and restricting the sale of fuel for public and private transportation. Venezuela now faces a pandemic that has even caused significant damage amongst the great powers of the world, doing so amidst a complex humanitarian emergency.
Cuando se declaró el estado de alarma, a mí lo que se me vino en la mente fue el miedo y luego incertidumbre. ¿Qué hacer ahora? De un momento así, ¿qué va a pasar? ¿Qué vamos a hacer con la organización?
Que sabíamos las condiciones sanitarias tan deficientes, el desmantelamiento de las capacidades sanitarias que existen en nuestro país y las dificultades que las personas íbamos a tener para cumplir con el confinamiento que forma parte del protocolo de prevención.
También sentí indignación por la indolencia de los gobernantes que han permitido que lleguemos a este grado de vulnerabilidad en donde la persona humana y su dignidad han sido desplazadas al último lugar.
Hoy le cambiaría el rocío a la tristeza para que no se pierda la palabra de gente común.
Deambulo por la ciudad, mi patria reparte distancia, escasez, soledad.
Tenemos un país extraviado de futuro.
Nos han arrebatado tantos sueños. A la felicidad le han puesto tapabocas.
Policies regarding the state of alarm have aggravated human rights violations against Venezuelans. At least 25.6% of people who died were health personnel, many of whom died due to a lack of personal protective equipment. Nationwide, only 143 mechanical ventilators are available. 4,414 protests during the first half of 2020. 130 femicides in 6 months of 2020. 81,000 Venezuelan migrants have returned as a consequence of the pandemic, being confined in precarious situations and classified by government authorities as biological weapons.
En este espacio soy protagonista. Quiero que mi palabra resista y se reconozca en el horizonte.
Quiero una respuesta encendida de honestidad, que el aire que respiramos no nos asfixie.
Que no se arrugue mi país.
Quiero ser eco de una voz donde el amor no tenga fronteras.
Human rights defenders and activists have learned to be resilient, a trait that is necessary to adapt to confront and change the reality of the most vulnerable in our society.
Para nosotros ha sido muy importante hacer, digamos, una revisión de lo que ha estado ocurriendo en líneas generales en toda la región, hacer énfasis sobre todo en la situación de los servicios públicos, no solamente en Maracaibo, sino también en otras zonas, en la costa oriental del lago, por ejemplo.
Así que comenzamos a hacer actividades digitales como conciertos, reuniones, foros sobre diferentes temáticas para poder contribuir a que la gente pudiera mantener esa situación de restricción y de protección. En segundo lugar, mantuvimos nuestros trabajos de documentación realizando informes sobre las diferentes denuncias que veníamos recopilando y sistematizando para remitirlas a los organismos internacionales de protección como el Alto Comisionado de Naciones Unidas para los Derechos Humanos.
Creó un producto que hemos llamado espacios de transparencia, que han sido foros de naturaleza internacional y nacional con destacados ponentes para visibilizar temas de la mayor relevancia en este momento.
Trabajamos por los acuerdos humanitarios, por acuerdos electorales, por acuerdos políticos, pues consideramos que el único camino para salir de la grave situación que atraviesa el país es un acuerdo integral en el que todos los venezolanos podamos trabajar.
Hemos aumentado nuestro despliegue de soporte humanitario para llegar incluso a localidades como Sea en el estado Mérida, Boconó en el estado Trujillo, en Barquisimeto en diversas localidades, igual aquí en Miranda, en Barlovento.
También hemos acompañado igualmente a las familias de los niños que están en el interior, en sus hogares, con estas patologías crónicas tan graves y que no pueden moverse, y eso ha sido bien complicado, pero ahí estamos, seguimos.
Nuestro servicio de atención psicológica pasó de ser presencial a ser remoto para poder atender a esas mujeres por teléfono, por WhatsApp, por cualquier medio de comunicación que a ellas les permitiera tener la contención emocional, la asesoría que necesitaban para salir de esas situaciones de violencia.
Hemos también comenzado a acompañar a los niños que no están inscritos en un sistema escolar, niños no escolarizados. De tarde los acompañamos, las maestras vienen para que estos niños cuando comiencen la escuela puedan incluirse, accesar al sistema escolar. Nos estamos acoplando, buscando cómo responder en este tiempo y no perder el tiempo o perder la esperanza ante lo que estamos viviendo.
Quienes defienden y exigen derechos humanos en el país no se han dejado vencer por la política de criminalización o miedo. Por el contrario, siguen día a día documentando, denunciando, difundiendo las violaciones de derechos humanos para poder así avanzar en procesos de verdad, justicia y reparación que las víctimas necesitan y ejercer todas las medidas necesarias para que el Estado cumpla con sus obligaciones de respetar, garantizar y proteger derechos humanos.
Un canto en el viento, un fuego en las voces.
Un sueño que sueña una patria naciente, signadas en las colinas musicales de mi país.
Un camino de sol, herencia de crepúsculos, recuperar a mi ciudad perdida y que en el alma sembrada de adversidades crezca la esperanza de una nueva semilla.
Our Venezuela has incurable wounds, but our ills are not forever. Activism and human rights advocacy have never been an act of magic. We can't wave a wand and make the trouble go away. But there is a formula. Assist, document, report, and denounce abuses. Tactics that are mobilized thanks to the spirit of activists and defenders who fight for justice for victims, so that in Venezuela, we do not lose our dignity.
According to the Lancet COVID-19 Commission, there are 4 challenges that must be faced cooperatively worldwide. The first one, of course, is to suppress the pandemic as rapidly as possible. The second is to meet the pressing needs of vulnerable groups. The third one is to prevent the public health emergency from turning into a financial crisis. And the fourth one is to build the world back better. Having all of them in mind, I want to concentrate on the disproportionate effects on the most vulnerable groups in Colombia and around the world, especially in the Global South. The homeless, refugees, immigrant workers, prisoners, women working at home, women subjected to domestic violence. We must bring to global attention the long-term economic and social challenges of the virus crisis, particularly those that the most marginalized segments of society will face over the coming years and are already facing, and of course how they could be mitigated. Civil society in the Global South is playing an important role during this crisis and has demonstrated the added value of cross-sector collaboration among organizations in different countries, because what happens in what country affects its neighbors, close and far. And this reflects in terms of access to food, to water, to medicine, to work, to livelihoods. We continue to amplify the voice of the Global South with an amphibious approach that develops ideas and perspectives and turns them into recommendations, practices, and activism based on our experience as countries with our own challenges and our own answers to those challenges. Based on this experience, we have, for instance, rejected the conversion of this health crisis into a security issue and insist in the production of knowledge based on civil society participation, so that human rights are not violated in the name of security in the international agenda of human rights. The Justicia has responded by analyzing the impact of the pandemic in human rights so public policy gets more informed, as well as we have also challenged before the courts some of the decisions made by the Colombian government. We launched a research and analysis effort called From Fear to Action, and this was done as soon as the quarantine began in Colombia. First, we hosted a series of webinars tackling issues from gender and prisons to economic policy and inequality. And now we have a whole series of policy papers analyzing each particular issue in depth. Regarding litigation, we also challenged our tax system in order to fight before the Constitutional Court, in order to fight this historic socioeconomic inequality of our country that will be exacerbated if the very rich of this country maintain their privileges without contributing progressively for social programs. We are still on time for our governments to understand that now, more than ever, the concept of the maximum of available resources should be applied to the fulfillment of human rights and the achievement of a sustainable and inclusive development. And in this task, we, you, members of civil society in the Global South, have an important word to share and a key role to lead.
Echoes in a room I've learned to handle. Hours of idle with books and music I feel. But they can't tell a thing about how I feel. My joy being kept away from me. I stare pots in the kitchen absent-mindedly. 'Cause I know you can't keep honey from the bee. I call out names and get no answer. Spinning this void like a ballet dancer. How long will we live in this disaster? Clips of abuse get 6 million views. I swear the whole world's got me confused. So please, set me loose. news from the news. I can handle not seeing my babies. It's a game that mama plays. But I can't take the police spraying tear gas on babies. Why are we stuck with these governments of yes men, saying one thing and doing another, while families are lost and starving in Yemen? Police jump over laws, hurdle over rights, break down a woman's door, unleash 20 rounds in the air before she can speak. She's been bled in tonight. I can handle delays and curfews, because it's clear where my people stand. Because out there, it seems innocence won't save you. If there's a line in the sand or your color is like the sand, they'll put metal through you before you can say your name. But we feel it in the air. What is lost when you stop breathing? How empty the air in Thais, in Baton Rouge, in London, in Sada, in Aurora, in Aleppo, in Falcon Heights, in Donma, in Louisville, in Minneapolis, where police can't hear the sound of 500 years of oppression leading to a man's neck. Echoes in a room, echoes in a room I've learned to handle. Echoes in a room, echoes in a room I've learned to handle. But they can't tell a thing about how I feel. I call out names and get no answer. I call out names and get no answer. Spinning this void like a ballet dancer. But I know you can't keep honey from the bee. I know you can't keep honey from the bee. I know, yes I know, you can't keep honey from the bee. From an empty room, I write these blues. And mama, I can't breathe through these blues. So please, set me loose from the news.
Afrika jamana kono Panamanyala Panamani coronavirus mani Amerika jamana kono Panamanyala Panamani coronavirus mani Europe jamana kapana yenyelike Panamani coronavirus mani Shiniwa jamana Panama nyumanke ala Panama ni coronavirus mani mawalu severo Panama isa Dirimanyimba tata Panamani ala sebiye Panama yisa Sama Mamadu to sate jontola Alakira Mamadu to sate jonsito Sama Bubakari to sate jonto Bubakari tinyati to sate jonsito Sayama Solomanito sate jontola Kuluku Solomanito sate jonsito Sayate Mobato Trimanyala, Trimany, Tata Trimanyo, Trimanyma, Trimanyma, Trimanyi, Severo Panamanyala, Panamanyne, Panamanyi, Panamanyi, Coronavirus Manyi, Mogolu, Severo Panamanyi Manke. Sajue sira la tata alamanki sira Bana jube dinyaro severo alamanki sira Sajue sira la tata alamanki sira Bana jube corona severo alamanki sira
أريد أن أتكلم عن الموت. لن أتكلم عن موت عام، الموت المرعب بسبب الكورونا مثلا، أو الموت بسبب الحروب التي لا تزال تفتك بأعمارنا خاصة في البلاد العربية، أو الموت جوعا بسبب سياسات النهب والسلب التي طالت مؤخرا أموال الناس وجنى أعمارهم، ولا عن الموت غرقا سعيا للنجاة إلى بلاد أكثر أمنا. أريد أن أتكلم عن موت خاص، موت المئات من الفنانين والفنانات الشبان المفعمين بالشغف والطموحات والأحلام، لكن أسباب الموت العديدة التي تفتك بحيواتهم حرمتهم من تحقيق أحلامهم. فكان موتهم خسارة على مستويين: المستوى الشخصي العاطفي، وعلى مستوى الإرث الإبداعي، كون فن هؤلاء ملك للبشرية. السجن ما بيموتش، بس الوحدة بتموت، وأنا محتاج دعمكم علشان ما موتش. هذه كانت آخر رسالة وجهها شادي حبش قبل أن ينطفئ في سجن طرى بعمر 24 عاماً يوم 2 مايو 2020. شادي مخرج ومصور مصري فذ، اعتقل لمدة عامين على خلفية تصويره لأغنية ساخرة تنتقد النظام، فلم تحوله النيابة إلى المحكمة طيلة سجنه إلى أن فارق الحياة. مريم حمود فنانة مسرحية وكاتبة لبنانية متعددة المواهب، كتبت سنة قبل وفاتها: اليوم أشعر بطعم الدم في فمي، وأتنشق رائحة اليباب في حلب، وأسمع أصوات خناق الأطفال في غزة. اليوم اكتشفت أن العالم كله في جسدي، وأنني أعاني من وجع العالم ووحدته. توفيت مريم بعمر 32 عاماً يوم 1 نوفمبر 2017 عشية سفرها إلى برلين. حسن رابح أو الشاطر حسن كما كان يلقب لبراعته في فن الرقص توفي بعمر 25 عاماً يوم 22 يونيو 2016 عندما قرر أن يرقص رقصته الأخيرة فألقى بجسده في هواء بيروت من على شرفة منزله من الطابق السابع في شارع الحمراء في بيروت. حسن تعرض لأزمات نفسية عديدة نتيجة الظروف المعيشية الصعبة التي عاناها بعد مجيئه إلى لبنان هرباً من الحرب في سوريا، وعلى رأسها انعدام الرعاية الصحية والاجتماعية واستحالة حصوله على إقامة تخوله العمل والسفر. كتب حسن رابح على صفحته على فيسبوك ما يلي: السلام عليكم يا أحبائي، وسامحوني، ولتسقط كل الأنظمة الفاشية والفاجرة، النظام السوري، النظام الإسرائيلي، النظام الرأسمالي، النظام المخابراتي، داعش، كلهم وجوه لعملة واحدة، فالحق من الإله الواحد، وإلى فلسطين الرجوع. 3 حيوات من مئات أضعناها وكان يمكن أن تغنينا جميعاً. لا توقظ الضحية لئلا تصرخ. ومن أيقظها؟ من المسؤول؟ ريح تهب فتنعش الموتى. من أين تهب؟ من كل الجهات، من الوطن. ومن علمهم هذه اللفظة المهجورة؟ شعراء يغنون على ربابة: اقتلوهم. قتلناهم فابتكروا لفظة أخرى: الحرية. ومن علمهم هذه اللفظة العاصية؟ ثوار حماسيون: اقتلوهم. قتلناهم فتعلموا لغة أخرى: العدالة. العدالة؟ من علمهم هذه اللفظة؟ الظلم. هل نقتل الظلم؟ إذا قضيتم على الظلم قضيتم على أنفسكم. يوميات الحزن العادي، محمود درويش.
Hello, my name is Tishani Doshi. I want to read a poem for you today called Survival. I wrote it a few months ago, and I've been thinking a lot about the very muddy territory of what it means to survive, something that as humans we're genetically coded to want to survive against all odds, even if it means other people don't. I've been reading Primo Levi's If This Is a Man, about his year in Auschwitz and how he survived it. There is a complicity, a trauma, guilt around surviving. He uses a term called the drowned and the saved, and that in turn made me think of the many migrant boats crossing the seas trying to find safe harbor, and how so many of them don't make it. And what does that do to those of us who are alive, who have survived for whatever reason, which brings us to the other role of surviving, which is to bear witness, to say, to speak, to record, And I think living through this pandemic, something the world is going through together, has exposed very deeply the inequalities, the power structures that exist. So this poem is trying to hold all of these ideas at one time. Survival. Dear ones who are still alive, I fear we may have overthought things. It is not always a war between celebration and lament. Now we know death is circuitous, not just a matter of hiding in the dark or under a bed, not even a slingshot for our loved ones to carry. It changes nothing. Ask me to build a wall and I will build it straight. When the end came, were you watching TV or picnicking in a field with friends? Was the tablecloth white? Did you stay silent or fight? I hope by now you've given up the fur coat, the frequent flyer miles. In the hours of waiting, I heard a legend about a woman who was carried off by winds, a love ballet between her and the gods which involved only minor mutilations. How I long to be a legend, to stand at the dock and stare at this or that creature who survived, examine its nest, marvel at a tusk that can rake the sea floor for food. Hope is a noose around my neck. I have traded in my rollerblades for a quill. Here is the boat, the journey, the camp. If we want to arrive, we must push someone off the side. It is impossible to feel benign. How many refugees does it take to build a mansion? I ask again, shall we wait or run? Here is winter, the dense pack ice. Touch it. It is a reminder of our devastation, a kind of worship, an incantation.
Qasida to the statue of Sappho in Mytilene. Kyria, why do you stand askance, facing neither sea nor mountain, not even toward your wild flower fields? And the lyre on your shoulder, was it meant to be the size of the plastic jugs shouldered by Moria's refugees? I saw them in Sicily too, home of your first exile, where no rescue could pause time's grating on their memories. Your island is empty of poets, Kyria. I came to meet them, to recall the trembling earth under my feet. Hangers-on reporting to newsletters throng the cafes, researchers hacking at field work, polishing CVs. The migrants are all court poets now. At night, they labor to translate their traumas into EU legalese, or sit at your feet shouting into cell phones to scattered relatives trying to try the code of the model as I leave. Kyria, there's no way for me to see you, no date or sculpture's name, only fascist graffiti below your knees. Why do your eyes glare lifeless like apricot pits, your stone body dim, a paper lamp trembling in the breeze? Or is that you now, Kyria, wearing hijab, holding your Cleus's hand, glad to be home again, but not quite at ease?
راح أحكي عن أحدث المستجدات الوضع السوري اللي هي خطر المجاعة. بحسب تقدير حديث للأمم المتحدة يقدر أن 90% من السوريين في الداخل السوري يعيشون تحت خط الفقر المتمثل ب$2 أمريكي باليوم، وأنه 9.3 مليون من السوريين محتاجين إلى دعم وكالات دولية مختلفة، وأنه 1.4 مليون من السوريين لا يحصلون على الغذاء الكافي. يعني هذا خطر مجاعة. ميزته الجديدة أنه يشمل عموم السوريين بما فيهم الموالين للنظام، وتضاعف بالحقيقة كورونا اللي بسوريا اليوم تقترب من الذروة. نظام يحمل مسؤولية عن وضع الحل العقوبات الغربية الأوروبية والأمريكية، وآخرها قانون قيصر اللي اعتمد كسياسة أمريكية ب 17 حزيران الماضي قبل شهرين. هو اسمه قانون قيصر على اسم مصور بالشرطة العسكرية السورية سرب وهرب وخرج من البلد تقريبا 55,000 صورة لمقتولين، ل7,000 أو 8,000 من المقتولين تحت تعذيب. صور رهيبة يعني وردت بالأمم المتحدة، ويعني هي قضية كبيرة بالحقيقة. وقد يكون صحيح ذلك، ظرفيا أسهمت العقوبات بزيادة المصاعب الاقتصادية وانهار سعر الليرة وما إلى ذلك، ولكن بالحقيقة تدهور الأوضاع الاقتصادية واتساع دوائر الفقر بسوريا يسبق قانون قيصر. كان ب 2018 80% من السوريين تحت خط الفقر قبل قانون قيصر، ويسبق حتى الثورة السورية. يعني ب 2007 كان 37% من السوريين تحت خط الفقر، بالارتباط مع لبرلة الاقتصاد السوري، لبرلة جديدة أو تحول أبناء المسؤولين إلى الأثرياء الجدد، أثرياء السلطة، من يملكون السلطة صاروا يملكون الثروة. وكانت حرب حماية النظام اللي مستمرة اليوم بأشكال مختلفة شهدت أشكال من الحصار والتجويع لمناطق متعددة كانت خارج سيطرة النظام، حتى أن النظام طور شعار عدمي لهذا الحصار والتجويع هو الجوع والركوع. وشاف العالم وشفنا صور رهيبة يعني ارتبطت بأذهاننا بالبلدان الأفريقية الأشد فقرا، صور من مضايا، من الزبداني، من الغوطة الشرقية، من مخيم اليرموك، من حلب الشرقية، من الوعر بحمص، لأطفال ولا ناس من مختلف الأعمار مهزولين ومرضى، ودفن كثير منهم بصمت. بدراسة معروفة يقول الاقتصاد الهندي أمارتيا سن معروف عالميا أنه المجاعة لا تحدث في بلدان ديمقراطية. هذا ليس لأنه الديمقراطية هي الحل النوعي للمشكلة الاجتماعية لمشاكل الجوع، ولكن لأنه تسهل تعبئة الموارد وانتقال المعلومات عن المخاطر المحتملة، عن الجفاف، عن الفيضانات، عن الأوبئة، عن الحروب، وبالتالي توفر استجابة سريعة تتدارك هذه المخاطر. هذا صحيح بسوريا. السوريين قبل تعرضهم لإفقار اقتصادي مصاعد قبل الثورة وقبل حتى مجيء بشار للحكم تعرضوا لإفقار سياسي شديد. 100% من السوريين يعيشون تحت خط الفقر السياسي اللي يتمثل بالمنع من الاجتماع ولو في فضاءات خاصة ولو في بيوت، والمنع من الكلام في الشؤون العامة، الكلام العلني في الشؤون العامة، لا صحف لا راديو لا تلفزيون مستقل، ولا حتى إمكانية للكلام بالشارع أو بالبيوت الخاصة. الإفقار السياسي هو اللي قاد الإفقار الاقتصادي لدرجة المجاعة اليوم. السوريين كانوا بمجاعة سياسية قبل الوصول إلى التجويع والمجاعة الاقتصادية. ممكن بعض المساعدات الدولية تتدارك مخاطر المجاعة المهددة هنا أو هناك، ولكن ستبقى أي مساعدات حالها مثل حال برميل بلا قعر يراد ملء بالماء ما دام نظام البراميل المتفجرة قائم.
tell me, where does one turn to when their home becomes a hostile lover? Sinking. They're all sinking in the Mediterranean Sea. Our borders have become dense and long, and their ships have burst into splints. The sea is bloated with people's limbs. Their memories did not make it either. They're all sinking in the Mediterranean Sea. Watch how the bubbles float and pop. Funeral. Does my alarm clock wake me, or the nightmares? I often cannot tell. Both remind me of a lonely funeral. I share a room with strangers. We breathe in damp and each other's lungs. We are wheezers who will not complain. We are still sinking on dry land. Future. I work long to send money home, for they are sure of the future here. At home, everything is on quicksand, so we speak in the present tense. For home is an exposed nerve waiting. I work long here, saving my money, hoping to send the future back home. Danger. You tell me to save the planet, to reduce my carbon footprint, buy local, to turn my lights off. My footprints are not wanted here. I buy, but you think that I steal. I am afraid of what darkness might bring. You speak like I don't know danger. Inspired by a quote by Dr. Vandana Shiva, in which he says, everything is connected. The idea that everything is this hard matter, unrelated to each other, is still guiding a lot of science, old patriarchal stuff. The real science is science of interconnection, of non-separation, that everything is related. My mother taught me that one hand washes the other, two dancers moving instinctively into the shape of each other, fingers mirroring and intertwining underwater. So then, let us understand how we all move together, how a seed has to know the soil to become itself, the way many crops only ripen into bud when a bee seeks them. The rain must come, as must the sun, the weather offering a lesson in what it means to persevere in both shadow and in light. All this tended by a farmer's wisdom, learning just when to sow, rear, pluck. We are eating from a whole world, and we, once a seed, return back to the earth, giving life to the soil, and who knows what might grow in our memory. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.